Welcome to the 28th Miami Jewish Film Festival, the largest Jewish film festival in the world. We want to thank all of our members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, and all of you film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, SAGE, the Center for Advancement of Education, and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation for their continued support throughout all these years. My name is Carly Orshan, and I am the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives and Teen Education at SAGE. And I'm excited to be here to moderate a virtual conversation with director Tzvi Simchon, where his film will be premiering for this year's festival. Thank you all for joining us and for being here today. Tzvi, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and to talk with us about the film. Remember, those who will be watching this would have already seen the film ideally, so spoilers are allowed. And
Awesome.
and I want to just start off by giving a taste to the audience about who you are, where you came from, and how you kind of got into filmmaking specifically before we dive into the film itself.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really excited to be here and to be honored. And yeah, it's super humbling. I grew up in Flatbush, Brooklyn, super Jewish area. I myself am an Orthodox Jew, Orthodox religious Jew. I grew up watching movies with my dad a lot. Me and my dad are big movie buffs, and he got me into Spielberg, especially films from a very young age. I remember in particular, there's one film that really kind of probably changed the direction of my life, which was E.T. But it wasn't necessarily the film, although I mean the film itself was of course amazing. But my father showed me for no apparent reason. He just wanted to show me the behind the scenes, like some behind the scenes videos that they have of the film. And I must have been 11 or 12, and I was just immediately captivated by the entire process of making a film. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's like it could take years to make a film that we sit down and watch for an hour, and it's just like it's incredible. My father also introduced me into Premiere and editing, and one thing led to another. I started doing photography, but filmmaking really became a real passion of mine. And just to, I guess, just to end off this part, I'll say that what really pushed me to continue doing video, like commercial video production and filmmaking in general, which is what I do now full time, was when I graduated eighth grade. I graduated middle school, and I decided to make a video for the graduation ceremony in my school. It was obviously not a paid thing. I did it for fun. And some interviews, I brought my camera to school and I got some slow motion, videos. I put some pictures of everyone, from all, 8 years of being in school together. And my friends' parents, my classmates' parents, all reached out to my parents and said, like, oh my gosh, that video made me so emotional. I was crying. And to me, that was that till this day, that is the reason why I do what I do, both for films and for commercial video production, is the fact that I have the ability to invoke emotion and to even drive action and meaningful action and meaningful emotions through video is the reason why I do it till this day.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that background about yourself. And that certainly speaks and resonates with the film. And so let's dive into talking about Can These Bones Live Again?
Let's do
Um,
it.
and, I think the emotional aspect, is something that truly resonates. I've been to Poland six times on similar trips, and there are certain moments in the movie in the film that really like struck me emotionally, like bringing back into that space of standing in those in Majdanek, of standing in those specific spaces in Warsaw or wherever else. So, you know, let's talk a little bit about the process that you went through from ideas to kind of starting on this journey. And to also, I'm really curious about figuring out like how did you choose did you go chronologically with the group? Did you pick and choose? Like, was that the journey that they went on, the flow
Yeah.
of the film, or, how did the flow kind of come in and speak to that emotional resonance that you were trying to capture?
Sure thing. So I'll start with the last question real quick. So in terms of the filming in chronological order, I felt was very important. I wanted to very much capture the experience start to finish. With a couple exceptions, it's very much start to finish. We open up the film. The film opens up after a brief like introduction to the trip itself. We open up when they arrive at the airport, and they head straight to the Polo Museum. So that and every single, and we do day by day. That is all very much chronological. In terms of the actual how the film even came about. So this film is in conjunction and association with association organization rather called Names Not Numbers, and they're a Holocaust educational organization, and they go to many schools. I think they've something like a couple hundred or more. Don't quote me on that. They have a website. You can definitely check them out. But they educate actually students how to film a documentary. So I was a senior. When I was a senior in high school, I was supposed to go on that trip, on the Poland trip. Only a select few get to go, and I decided I wanted to go. I had my little camera, and I decided it would be great. And I at the time I wanted to make a film. This film I wanted to do when I was a senior. Unfortunately, senior year in high school was COVID, so the trip got canceled, and I was devastated. And so I was really upset. Fast forward a few years, my best friend, who's the producer of the film, Mendy Zisman, he's the one who basically orchestrated the whole thing. He and his family are very much involved in Names Not Numbers, and he's a very close friend of mine. Um, so he had mentioned to me a couple years later, "Hey, it's been a couple years since the last trip pre-COVID. I'm going to be a counselor on the trip. I can get you on the trip for free, and you can, make a film." And I decided like no brainer, of course. And it actually worked out better than if I would have gone a few years prior, simply because my equipment saw a massive upgrade. I actually have my camera now is I use a Canon C70 with Sigma glass and like really high-end stuff versus like a like a small little DSLR camera I would have filmed it on a few years back. So, things work out the way they should. That's how I like to look at the world, and that certainly is a good example. Um, I guess let me know if there's anything I missed from the initial question.
No, I mean, I think it's a really unique journey, and I think the one thing that I would say, because we know so many kids that have wanted to go on this journey, especially the COVID years, and then we run the March of Living program, and the post-COVID years, which we saw a Ukraine war and all these other
Right.
things happening. There was so many lost years. And so I think the perseverance that you continue to try to find your way to go on this journey, like, is really commendable. And I hope
Thank
that
you.
other people that didn't have that opportunity continue to try to find ways to get to Poland and to have this journey.
Thank you.
So knowing that, um, what what was your overall experience of, getting to know the group of teens and kind of immersing yourself with them and having them kind of share their experiences with you?
Sure. So, when most of the teens there I had known through high school, not so personally and not so well. Those teens were, I believe, either freshmen or sophomores by the time I graduated. Um, but we had some overlap in school. So I had some understanding of who they were. It's funny, a lot of them were in a photography club, which I was the president for 3 years in high school. So a lot of them knew me as the again I would run, it was a weekly club, and we'd do like fun like little activities and stuff. So a lot of people actually from the trip, I'd say about 4 or 5 out of the 15 were actually in the club, so they knew me from there. Um, Actually, it's interesting you ask because you know, and we can touch on it more later because it was one of the challenges that of me trying to kind of capture their experience and also experience it myself. So it was all of our first times in Poland. And you know, any camera operator knows, it's very hard to kind of focus, you know, kind of be present when like you're worrying, okay, I got to make sure my exposure is set right. I have to make sure the camera's stable. I have to make sure I get some different angles of this and that. So that was definitely a challenge while I was there. So they had a bit of a different experience than I did. Uh, but at the same time, I was very much trying to capture their own experience as well. So maybe vicariously, I was able to experience it through their eyes, which is kind of the beauty of the film. And really, the objective of it is that the audience kind of sees it through their eyes and sees it through their experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're hitting on a key element that I think filmmakers experience, photographers experience, but also trip facilitators
For
experience,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
When you're
100%. Yeah.
thinking of all the logistics and all of the how is this tekis or experience ceremony going to happen, and how are
Right.
we facilitating a meaningful opportunity for
Yeah.
students, and yet then it's the beauty of seeing them go through the
Yeah.
journey itself, right?
It reminds me of I think it's the scene from A Secret Life of Walter Mitty, or it might be a different one, of when like he's with the photographer and the photographer says sometimes if the moment is like right for me or if like the experience is right for me, I don't like the distraction of a camera. So
Yeah,
it kind of reminds me of that idea.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, can you share any particular anecdotes about shooting that really kind of resonated with you? Is there stuff that you would have liked that didn't make it to the film that you thought were really meaningful, or moments that occurred that you would like to reflect on?
Sure. I mean, as a religious Jew, I will say that there's a lot of things that I didn't include because I wanted it to be intended for a wider audience. I didn't feel that it was a drawback. For sure, there were a lot of experience. There's a lot of great scholars and people from Poland who affect, I guess, my life. And like there are holy books that they've written that I read and I enjoy. Um, and so a lot of the things that we're taken out of, I would say, were visiting a lot of graves. There are a couple scenes that I did include. Um, in terms of anecdotes, I would say that I mean, anecdote. I mean, this was in the film, but standing by the ashes of my Donic is for sure, I think, the most powerful part of the film. It's not. It's towards the middle of the film, but I would say it's probably like where it really sets in. So if you pay attention, for those who pay attention, the title of the film is "Can These Bones Live Again?" That comes from. It's a direct translation uh, from the prophets. And it talks about it's a very somber soliloquy, and it talks about dry bones coming back to life, but also touching on like just the destruction and kind of thinking about the destruction. And you see, the Rabbi Michael Taubes, who's kind of like the spiritual guide or like the rabbinic guide for the trip. He gets very emotional when he doesn't he literally just reads the scripture, and he gets very emotional, and you see the boys get very emotional. Um, and we sing a song. Uh, in Hebrew, it's called Vehisha Amda. It's a song about the fact that despite all the tribulations, all the pogroms, all the things that Jews have been through for the past thousands of years, we're still here. We're alive. We're thriving today. We're vibrant. We're connected to our heritage, and we have Jewish pride. So for sure. So back just really quickly. So just back to the title of the film. So that was so apropos simply because talking about, on the one hand, focusing on the destruction and the death, while also the idea of bones coming back to life. The film's title poses a question: Can these bones live again? And the answer is, of course, yes. And that's the theme throughout the entire film. The bones that have come back to life are these boys. the boys, many of them whose grandparents or grandparents' relatives were slaughtered in the Holocaust, many in Auschwitz specifically, but in other areas, they're they are the bones that have come back to life. We are alive here today, um, you know, and we're strong and we're showing resilience despite even continued hate nowadays, as we know, from the world, as anti-Semitism is again back on the rise. So for sure, that is. I was once I was just like thinking about a title for it. It wasn't until I was like almost done editing the film, and I was like, it just encapsulates the entire theme so perfectly.
I would agree. I think that that was such a profound moment in the film. It's something that I watched more than once, as someone who's led
Wow.
ceremonies in Majdanek. I was really struck by the scripture and by that experience. And I think you're hitting on an important message that's kind of like zooming out from the film itself of, heritage trips to Poland in the past was just like to remember and this concept of never again. And nowadays it's really to reflect, I think, a little bit more, as you mentioned, on the resilience of the Jewish people and that we are thriving as a Jewish people and persevering even in the midst of somewhat unimaginable hate that is occurring in this world today. And so I really think that this is a beautiful film that reflects and speaks to these moments. And I want to thank you so much for contributing to that canon and
Thank
to
you.
the narrative. Because I think that it's so important nowadays than ever, and that it is uplifting. And
Yeah.
as a group, we typically go to Poland and to Israel on our trips, and last year we could only go to Poland, and there was such worry, would it end uplifting? And we sang and we danced in the JCC, and we
Right.
did, those things and to celebrate Jewish and what Judaism is. And I think that it's wonderful that you could capture that. Are there anything else that you want to share about this film and or why this was, important to you? You reflected a little bit on that, or anything else that you want to add to your process and what you've gone through to make this film?
Sure. So like I said, I mean, there's a whole story of the fact that I was supposed to make this film, or I was going to make this film earlier on in my life, and the fact that I was able to make it later on, even though at the time I was a little upset, but it worked out later, is certainly it ended up being incredibly advantageous and meaningful. I myself, I myself went, I went to Israel for a gap year. And we learn a lot. You go to Yad Vashem in Israel, and you kind of gain a very deep experience about it in Israel, and you gain a sense of Jewish pride and heritage when you're there. So I'll say that it's exceptionally meaningful to me, and even though it's a passion project and I had very little help on it. I mean, I'm kind of the only name in the credits, which is what I think is really cool. I know, I mean, some people might think that that's not great, but for me, I mean, I it was so invigorating for me that I had that opportunity to kind of put it all together myself. Um, and yeah, I mean that's definitely the message. And when we're speaking with Avi Baumel, he actually made it very Rabbi Avi Baumel in the JCC of Krakow, and he said it out verbatim that people come to Poland and they think that it's all death and destruction, and but really it's our story is a story of resilience. Why do we say never for never forget? There's many answers to that question, but what the answer that resonates the most with me is never forget the atrocity of it, but also never forget that we're still here. And our story continues to unfold, and it is a story um, of sadness, of death and destruction, but ultimately it's a story of resilience, strength, um, and purpose. And I think that that film encapsulates it very well. And for me, even though I mainly, right now full time, I do commercial video production, but this was probably my favorite film or favorite thing I've ever put together. And it was really a pleasure working with Names Not Numbers on it. They provide continuous support and insight as to how to deliver certain messages, how to piece things together. I also give a quick shout out. I mean, I took a film course in SUNY Empire State. So Professor Goldberg, if you're seeing this, she was amazing at providing some insight there as well. So, but altogether, I'm really happy with how it came out, and I really hope that the film strikes people and kind of that message of resilience is delivered and back to the reason I do what I do is because I want to invoke emotion and I want to invoke messages that resonate with people and that bring people up and not bring people down.
Well, thank you for contributing to that and to this community and to the film festival. I
Thank
think
you.
your film certainly does do that, and it is truly a pleasure for us to be able to see it and be a part of that story of what you have set forth. So thank you so much, Zvi, for letting us have this conversation and for what you have created with the film, Can These Bones Live Again? And once again, I want to thank all of our members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, and all of you film lovers, and especially SAGE and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. Thank you so much for participating in the 28th Annual Miami Jewish Film Festival.
Thank you so much.